Perfect. Okay, we're recording. Welcome to Off the Beaten Track podcast, and sitting opposite me via the means of Zoom is Grant from Feeder. Hello.
Hey Stuart, how's it going?
It's good, mate, thank you. We were just saying before we press record, we've been having some back and forth for a few months trying to get this one in the can, and I guess we've got to a point where people seem to have a little bit more time on their hands now, for better or worse. Yeah. How have you found lockdown?
It's been pretty tough. I mean, some weeks seem to be better than others. I don't know if you've been the same. Like some days seem harder than others. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've got a nice house, and I've got, touch wood, so far no one's been ill in my family. It's just so difficult. Obviously, not doing any shows. Obviously, our whole year at the moment has pretty much been put on hold. It's tough say for people in all sorts of fields of, all different jobs, but I think music business has been particularly hit hard as well. I do feel people, not only people like myself, obviously in bands, but, venues and just kind of, the whole entertainment business has been completely, just come to a grinding halt. It's pretty scary really, but to answer your question, I'm healthy at the moment, so, touch wood, I'll get through this, and we'll all get through this. But it has been a very bizarre time. I didn't expect this to ever happen in my lifetime. It's like some bizarre kind of sci-fi film, isn't it?
It's crackers, but I do sort of keep telling my kids, like, do sort of take this in, because you're, as much as me and my wife are as well, we're experiencing history here. It is something that, like you say, you never expected to sort of be involved in something like this. It's crackers. It really is.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing to my son. I was saying, you'll be telling your kids, in years to come, because it is, I just hope that, if this sort of thing comes around again, that we're a bit more kind of, prepared for it really. But, it is a scary time, but hopefully we're over the worst. We just need to be careful now, and not sort of, I know obviously that they've kind of eased the sort of lockdown a bit, but we still need to be really careful out there,
Yeah, totally. So I've seen that you've been, I run a music venue, and so I've been trying to sort of, think what I can do creatively to try and sort of stay engaged with, the people that enjoy coming to my club. So we're doing sort of radio shows and stuff like that. And I've seen that you've been doing, online, gigs, solo stuff on your own. You've been playing and stuff.
Sort of stuff, kind of, keeping it really low-fi, just doing it to my iPhone, just like bits into the studio, really. I didn't want to, you never quite know how much to do, because it's, it's good for my headspace just to do it, and it's been quite good fun, kind of going back and trying to actually play some of those songs I haven't played for over 20 years. I've done a couple of really old ones, but I also don't want to sort of bombard people with stuff. I'm just doing it really just to help people at home who are bored and maybe haven't heard those songs yet for a long time. I think that, it's been quite good for me, because I don't think I ever would have played some of those again, or certainly, I think, I could really see those being in the next Feeder set list. So maybe it's been quite nice to sort of revisit those tracks. But to answer your question, it's been good for my headspace doing that as well. So it keeps me practicing and just sort of keeps me in the zone. It still gives me something to do. I've been doing some writing, but not as much as normal. I don't know, my head's been in a weird space. I normally write all the time, but for some reason, because I think it's almost like I don't know what's in the future. I'm not sure what's ahead. So it's very difficult to actually finish anything at the moment. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah,
it's a weird time. I sort of feel like I'm in limbo,
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it started, I just had this kind of knee-jerk panic to try and just sort of create as much as I could and keep my brain active. And then I think as we've sort of started to adjust to, the current reality, I then find myself kind of just not really trying to do something new. Just I'm finding quite difficult. I'm just kind of enjoying doing what I know, which is this.
Yeah, I'm the same actually. Everyone's saying, "Hey, I'm learning to play the piano. I'm going to learn Spanish," but I haven't. I don't know. I haven't sort of managed to get. I sort of started off well. I sorted out all the garden, cleared out, 2 garden sheds, got rid of a load of stuff, which I've been putting off for years. And then I've sort of I sort of went, oh, okay, what should I do now? So I have written a couple of new tracks, not totally finished, but I've got a few. And just before this all kicked in, I just finished 6 kind of new Feeder tracks as well. So I do have a few kind of in the can.
Yeah.
But I do want to get my head back into what I do best, obviously, which is songwriting. And yeah, I just haven't been as focused as I say as I normally am. But I think that's understandable, really.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, talking of writing songs, and I guess that the starting point is the intro. So for track one, Grant, I want you to tell me the song that you think's got the greatest ever intro.
Do you know, that is a really impossible one. I was thinking, like, that's a really tough question. I could name like 20 now, but there's so many obvious ones. Back in Black and Kashmir and stuff. But I've gone for one which might be less obvious, but it just takes me back to a moment. I think it was around 1980, was it 89 or around that kind of time. I was at the Birmingham Manic Street. I went to see U2 play. And, love U2 or not, they are a great big stadium arena band, and they do it really well. And they're a band that have been around for a long, long time, since I was, my first school band and stuff like that. But I remember them coming on and they opened, it was the Joshua Tree tour. And they came on to Where the Streets Have No Name. And it was just unbelievable atmosphere. And I think, there was something in that kind of, just in the way they did that intro, that it's been quite influential to me as well, and to Fido. We often have a lot of intros for our keys. It just sets a really good atmosphere for the show. And I think it's a really amazing song as well. I mean, there's a lot
It's an incredible record, mate. Incredible record.
You two have written some amazing songs. Okay, I know some people don't, aren't fans, but
it's easy to hate on U2, Grant. I think it's too easy, and people. It's the same with Coldplay, but people take swipes at them. They write great records. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And Joshua Tree.
I picked this one because I thought I'd fly their flag a little bit, because I think they've had a hard time the last few years, and I think they are an incredible band. And we've been on tour with them as well. We did a tour, so that's another reason why I picked this. We did 4 or 5 huge football stadiums all over the place with them, and they were amazing live. There's not many bands that can hold a huge audience like that and have a catalogue of songs like they have. And Where the Streets Have No Name, just the way it starts, with the organ, and then you got the Edge doing his sort of, his trademark like guitar sound, or his crazy.
It's the bass drum. It's waiting for that bass drum when that comes.
The old fall to the floor. It's the old dance beat. It's just a great intro, and I think that people have tried to sort of. I mean, I think that just that track and that style has definitely been copied by a lot of people since. I think they're a very influential band.
So I want to ask you, Grant, when you write songs, you touched on intros then in your work. Yeah. Have you changed? Because I'm always interested, and I always ask musicians this question: if they've changed how they approach writing an intro to a song from when you first started out in Feeder to where you are now, like the way that people listen to music has changed greatly. Do you still consider radio when you're putting music together? Do you know what I'm trying to get at with this question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a real song guy. I mean, I'm pretty old fashioned. I'm not very technical. I mean, I used to engineer in the studio back in the day, tape machines, and I was actually pretty good at that. I'm pretty bad on computers. I'm a little bit lazy. I tend to be a bit more of an old school like style kind of writer and producer, where I'm more about the sounds and the song arrangements and stuff like that, and all the melodies. But for me, I still actually write very similar to what I did even when I first started off in the early days of Feeder. Just me sat, just sort of playing guitar. I'm using an acoustic guitar. That's what I write probably 98% of the songs on. And I think that's a really good way to start out a song, because if it works in a simplistic way like that, it's often a good sign. But obviously, there's some tracks that are more riff-driven that, you wouldn't really write on acoustic guitar necessarily. But that has always been the way, that's always been my kind of formula. And then the kind of, all the grandiose and all the kind of intros and all the, all those layers, that sort of comes afterwards. That's all kind of floating around my head, as I'm writing it, just sort of sat there in the kitchen, just, with a bottle of wine, just playing my acoustic. I'm annoying the kids, but I still write in the same way. It's always been about melodies for me. I'm very much into structured songs. I love choruses. I like, verse, bridge, chorus, and kind of middle eights. I'm from that school,
Yeah, wonderful.
The sort of Tom Petty school, as I call it.
That's a good place to go, though. Grant, for track 2, the first
Yeah.
song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you?
Do you know, this is the tough question because I was trying to think, but I mean, it's probably something emotional, you know, song made me think about the lyrics because, you know, when you're a kid, you don't often think about the words. But
Sure.
I do remember hearing like Imagine by John Lennon, which is an absolute classic. And it's quite a sad song, but there's something very uplifting about it. And I do remember being kind of listening to the words for the first time as a kid to that song, you know, simplistic as they are. I mean, it's a really beautiful song, really simple, like piano part. But I remember that song had, you know, definitely had an impact on me. Obviously, I was a Beatles fan as well, but I don't know, when I heard Imagine, I can't remember how old I would have been. It came out, what, early 70s, didn't it, or something?
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 67, but that one definitely had an impact on me.
What would that emotion have been?
Do you know, I don't know. I think I'm not sure if it was a combination of just like the melody and maybe the video. But I kind of remember the video with him in yoga,
Yeah.
you know, with white piano, all wearing white. It's very sort of heavenly. I mean, it was a bit, I suppose it was a bit sort of over the top, but it was just one that really touched me. I mean, it is a classic song.
Yeah.
There's just something in the chord change and just like the melodies and the lyrics. It just makes you think a little bit about life. And I think for that to have an impact on you, you know, when you're quite young, I think is quite a, you know, it's quite a powerful thing. Definitely. So that's why I picked that one.
So where would you have been then? Where was you born?
Oh, well, I've been in South Wales.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born in Newport, you know, just over the border, and I grew up just outside Chepstow, which is literally just on the other side of the Severn Bridge, sort of in between Newport and Chepstow. So yeah, I'm from a very small town, quite sort of, you know, lots of farmers, and, you know, not much to do really, apart from kind of, you know, do music, you know, which is what, you know, that's kind of what, got me into being in a band and dreaming of being a rock star one day.
Was there music on at home? Was you exposed to music growing up?
Yeah, I was sort of kind of older brother. My parents, you know, were really into music, but not huge. You know, they weren't kind of finding all the cool bands or anything like that. My mum was more from a kind of she used to sing, so she used to do lots of musicals and stuff like that. You know, things like Sound of Music and all those kind of classics. You know, so she was very musical. And then my older brother really was the one that I started to sort of notice his, you know, him playing stuff. And then I thought, oh, you know, this sounds cool. And then just kind of meeting friends from school and just sort of friends who lived in the town. There was lots of kids into rock and punk rock, you know, when I grew up. So that was quite influential. But then my brother was into sort of like classic stuff like Fleetwood Mac, you know, Pink Floyd, you know, Beatles, you know, some rock stuff as well, like, you know, Led Zeppelin and things like that. So that's when I discovered sort of, you know, loud guitars really, and I got into Black Sabbath. And I mean, I was really into punk rock, and I was a big Sex Pistols fan as well. So, and I discovered them actually quite young. You know, I think I was into the Pistols when I was about 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, we used to have some. There was a really cool kind of little indie record shop in Monmouth, which is about 15 miles from Chepstow, and he used to have like really cool stuff in there. And I learned quite a lot actually just from going in there and buying singles and just hanging out in this kind of little tiny record shop. But yeah, it was a combination of that, mates, you know, older brother. My dad used to play, you know, stuff in his. He used to have an old Rover, and he used to have those old cassettes, you know, those really big cassette things.
Yeah.
Cool, but he used to play stuff like Beach Boys or things like Stylistics,
yeah,
stuff like that. It was so. Yeah, I mean, I've had a pretty interesting musical background. I've been exposed to lots of different types of music, and I think probably growing up in a small town, not being in the cool London scene, probably, you know, I probably grew up with a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have heard necessarily if I'd been living in London. I also had a friend that came over who was American, and he basically ended up in Chepstow somehow, of all places, and we ended up being bands together and, you know, listening to music all the time. And he introduced me, to a lot of kind of American rock, classic 80s stuff, and, you know, late 70s stuff like Boston and all that kind of stuff. So sorry, I'm just going on now, but yeah, I've had
you're talking about the people that you met then, so that's good, because that leads us on to the next question anyway, Grant, which is the song that reminds you of your time at school.
Yeah, well, I think I've just named a few really. I think if there's one song that kind of brings back a little bit of a, well, does it have to be one? I said trouble.
You can have some honourable mentions, mate. Of course you can.
Yeah, well, look, I was in the school band from about the age of 10. I mean, it started off as a two-piece band, and then I started to actually learn how to play guitar a bit better. And then I had a school band called Sweet Leaf, which is obviously a Black Sabbath song. We were a three-piece, and we were playing anything from Black Sabbath to Space Oddity, from David Bowie. We played some early Police, stuff like, Roxanne, that kind of stuff. And then kind of anything really that we could play, maybe a bit of AC/DC, a bit of Led Zeppelin, but always a kind of gig favourite at the school kind of concerts that we used to do at the end of term was Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
Wonderful.
So that's one that really does remind me of that time. Yeah. Just playing Paranoid to a load of crazy kids.
What did you want to be? Did you want to be a rock star when you was at school?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to play guitar. I never planned on being a singer. I mean, singing came later. Just that really came from just me kind of songwriting and just kind of singing along as I was trying to write songs. I never had the confidence yet to ever be a frontman singer, so I just wanted to play guitar and crank the old fuzz box up. But it was I kind of decided I was going to be in a band, I think, from about 10 or 11 to the frustration of my teachers, and I think my parents were a bit worried about it. Even though my mum was musical, I think they were thinking, well, we'll get a career first. But I was very determined. I was always kind of really into art and kind of music stuff, and I don't know, I just kind of had this feeling that I would do this one day. I was always drawing pictures on the back of my school books of like guitars, like, Flying V's and Gibson Les Pauls and Fender Strats and stuff like that. I'm getting told off, by my maths teacher for doing it. So I think I had that. I had that dream and desire from about, I'd say probably from about 9 or 10 years of age.
Was music encouraged at school?
Yeah, I wasn't really that. Well, I played trumpet at school, which I found really boring. And I remember, because I'm self-taught. I mean, I used to read music on trumpet, but I haven't, I don't score anything like that. I'm terrible. I'm a total ear player. So I taught myself how to play guitar. I've never had a lesson. I learned just by, sat in my bedroom trying to play along to records. And that was the way that, that I learned how to play guitar. And also watching a few of the other school bands who were in the sixth form and being kind of totally mesmerized by them. But yeah, I mean, music was, I think back in those days, music wasn't as fun as it is now. I think, things have really come on a bit more. We didn't have electric guitars in our music room. It was like a triangle and a tambourine, and it was all a bit, all a little bit boring. So I probably wasn't like, I certainly wasn't a grade A student at music or anything like that. I basically kind of taught myself and found my own way. Not that I wouldn't encourage people now to do that at schools, because obviously, it's a whole different world now. But in some way that made me kind of find my style, I suppose. I think it's good to have lessons, don't get me wrong. But I think that, but it also comes a time where if you can find a style of playing, you don't even have to be the best. Just find something. It might be a crazy pedal you use or whatever it is, a crazy tuning or a certain way you sing. Sometimes that's actually more important, Was
you a confident kid?
Not really, no. I wasn't like sort of. I used to have mates that were either like the really cool kids or like the real geeky kids, and so I was sort of somewhere in the middle. And because it's
the best place to be, always being in betweener.
Yeah, but I found the geeky kids, were really funny and more interesting. Do you know what I mean? And it was like I just had a similar sense of humour to them. But so I suppose I was one of those really as well. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't bullied. I was fine. I could stand my ground. I was okay at sport. I wasn't brilliant. Academically, I wasn't great. I was good at certain things. I didn't have to work too hard at. But yeah, I think, I wouldn't say I was confident. I was probably somewhere in the middle, I guess.
What about?
I certainly wasn't a natural, show off on stage. And if I was asked to do a part in a play, I'd run a mile. I'd find that terrifying. Whereas now I have to walk on stage all the time.
Did you never like attention then?
I think everyone likes attention. I think it was more just the fear of being on stage, making a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
I still worry about that every day. I think with music, and I think with songs, I think you can, they're your little babies, and it's almost like a shield in some way. But yeah, and I think especially if you're doing somebody else's song, that's even more comfortable. I think,
Yeah.
being a cover version, there's like, I don't know, there's a screen of like confidence that sort of comes up,
Yeah. So that would have been, that fear would have been when you was up there
Yeah.
at 14 playing Paranoid in the school band.
Yeah. I think I was very determined. I think I was very determined as a kid. I don't know if confidence is the right word, but when I decided that I really wanted to do something, I would always follow it through. And I think music is something I definitely pursued, and and that's why I'm here today, I guess.
I think you've got to have a strong sense of drive. You've got to be driven to I think to achieve success in the music industry and to sustain it as you have as well. There's got to be drive there. And
yeah, I mean, I'm very driven. I mean, I always have been. I think that's been probably probably drives some people mad, but it's probably been a secret of my longevity in some way. And I've always been, I've always been like quite creative, and I'm always kind of writing and doing stuff and trying to do. I mean, the thing is, it's very difficult to tick every box and keep everybody happy in this business, because you can get slated for being, it's the same old thing, but then you can get slated by doing something which isn't you, blatantly isn't what you do, and kind of losing your way musically a little bit. And I think a lot of artists do fall by that in some way. It's hard because I think what you've got to do at the end of the day is just play to your strengths. It's good to experiment, and it's good to listen to other bands and get influence, but at the end of the day, you just got to do what feels right to you, because I think people can see through it when it's not. And I've seen a lot of bands, I can see, they've made a record and worked with a certain producer, and it might be great, but you can see it's not really their soul as a band.
yeah,
and I think I'd rather be, I know it might sound odd, I'd rather be less successful doing music that I like doing than be successful doing music that feels uncomfortable and feels a bit forced.
yeah. And I think listeners, they'll sniff it out. They'll you can't kid them. You can't fake it, I don't think.
The last sort of 30 years of the band, I think if you do that, I think it's good to experiment. There's always been a few albums that don't connect and aren't always your best, but that's just part of the job. That's part of the, that's part of the dream, and that's part of the business. But that's fine. Not everything is going to be amazing. That's all part of the journey.
Completely. Track 4. What was the first song you bought from a record shop?
This is a tough one. Now, I've been asked this before, and I may have said 2 different things. So
you can say 2, mate.
I think the first album I bought was ABBA Arrival. ABBA, absolutely classic pop song, timeless songs. Those songs are just even sound great nowadays. I mean, there's been nobody else that quite like ABBA. I've got a lot of time for that, for them.
It's really weird how their music transcends. Like, I've got 2 daughters that are sort of in their early teens, and I was driving along the other day, have Absolute on or something like that, and SOS come on, and they were both singing it, and I maybe would have got it if it was Dancing Queen or maybe Mamma Mia, but I was just like, how do you know this? They're like, I don't know, it's just ABBA, isn't it? And I was just thinking, just brilliant. How these I've said it before on this podcast, how some songs find their way. The first time it happened, I've mentioned this before, was Aztec Camera's Somewhere in My Heart, and both my kids were singing it, and I was just like, how do you know this record? Like, that came out when I was their age, and I just think them perfect pop songs just find their way somehow.
But, I mean, classic songs, of all genres, I mean, that's what makes them classic and timeless. And that's always my dream as a writer, to try and, have a few of those, before I call it a day. And those are the songs that, like what you just said, they're the songs that our kids, will keep singing and, will, discover, because they're good tunes, and there's something in those songs, whether it's the melodies or something that people like connect with. And that's, that's gold. And that's, what makes those records so timeless. But I think, so sorry, going back to your question, that was the first album I bought, if I remember, but I think the first single I bought, they used to have this bargain box in the Woolworths in Chepstow when it was still there. And I was going there and go through it, because, you used to find some quite good singles in there. And I think the first ever actual record I remember buying was a single, and I think it was Beatles, which is not a bad one, actually. And all I remember is it had Eleanor Rigby on one side. It might have been, I don't know if it was like a one-off single or whatever it was. I think it might have had Get Back or something on the other side. But I remember hearing like Eleanor Rigby, which I think was the B-side. I was totally blown away with it. I actually preferred that to Get Back. I thought Eleanor Rigby was amazing. I loved all the strings on it and stuff like that. I just thought, God, what an amazing song.
That's an emotional impact, that one.
That was the first thing I bought. I can't remember how old I was.
That was bizarrely my only memory of studying music at school was we had to sit down and dissect Eleanor Rigby.
Did you?
And and I'd never heard that song. I'd heard all the kind of 60s, the early 60s sort of rock and roll Beatles stuff, but I'd never really sort of heard any of the other stuff at that point. And hearing Eleanor Rigby, I mean, that's a somber record, isn't it? And
but just the strings and I think it's a quartet and stuff on there. It's absolutely amazing. Do you know, I've tried to write that song, but not that song, but that kind of something like that so many times. You know, and I've kind of been working with strings in my head and stuff like that. And I've touched on that formula, but it's just an amazing track. And again, that's been very influential. I mean, you can listen to bands, of our genre, like people like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that. He used a lot of string arrangements. It all comes from that, that era, really, and a lot of those 70s bands, they did it really well. But yeah, that is such a fantastic song. Actually, my kids, I'm not sure they were doing it at school as well for music, but I think they were actually. They really like that song as well because it's a great song.
Yeah, incredible. They'll go far, the Beatles, mate. I'm telling you. Track 5, the song that soundtracked your year's clubbing. So right. I should say, Grant, because anyone that's in a band, he's probably going to say what you're about to say, right? It can be going to like your local rock club or your indie nightclub.
Okay.
It hasn't got to be neon and chrome dancing with your shirt with your hands in the air, unless you want.
I went back to when I remember like clubbing, because obviously didn't have any, wasn't really any clubbing back in South Wales. Well, certainly not in Chepstow anyway. Not that I can remember that were any good. But when I moved to London, which was sort of late 80s, I worked in a recording studio. I got a job as a tape op and then worked my way up to engineering. And it was really around that whole time, that kind of, the late 80s, early 90s was huge for clubbing, wasn't it? But then but there was quite a lot of different stuff, because you could say, because I remember like Stone Roses being quite a big sort of like club band and people like that, and also the Happy Mondays. So I was going to pick one of them, but I've actually gone for Killer by Adamski and Seal. You know the song Killer?
I've had Adamski on this podcast.
I worked with him in the studio. I was actually the tape op, and I remember, because I knew Seal before he was Seal, Samuel Henry, and he used to come and hang out in the studio because he was friendly with my boss. Just used to come up on his bike, and he used to always want to be like a singer. He was a really charismatic guy. He had this really cool hair, and he used to come, and I used to show him how to play a few chords on guitar sometimes. And he had something about him, obviously apart from an amazing voice, he just looked like a rock star or a pop star, whatever. And he went to a club one night, and I think that's when he met like Adamski. And I think he did like a live vocal, I think it was to one of the backing tracks to say that Adamski had done, and that ended up being Killer, I think. And I remember them coming into the studio and hearing this track for the first time. I was thinking, this track's going to be massive.
Yeah.
And it's just a time that I remember. And I remember going, I did go to quite a lot of clubs at that time, just through work and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily my kind of music, but I kind of really got into it after a while, because I was really into rock. So it was quite educational for me. But that's why I picked that one, because it's quite a nice story. And obviously Seal went on to be a massive, global star. And my boss, who used to manage him, I think made a load of money out of it. And I actually remember, if you've got time, sorry, I'm not trying to bore you with this.
Oh, I'm loving this.
But I remember, and this is a true story, that track was originally recorded onto a live, it was like Seal singing basically onto a DAT, like a live vocal, because he was a really good singer. And he was like, I think he was kind of jamming it a bit, obviously making up some of the lyrics as he went along, probably. And there was no actual kind of multi-track of it, because it was all tape machines in those days. So I remember there was a remix guy, I think he was called Ben Chapman, and he was quite hot at the time. And they wanted to remix his track, but there was no tape to remix it. So I remember having to record from Adamski's little keyboard workstation, which is what he wrote it on.
Yeah.
And with Seal's vocal, putting that onto tape. I think I was the first guy to do that. It's just a little tape op, and they probably didn't have to pay much money. Can you just go and put that on tape for them? That was my claim to fame at the time.
And that's killer. Wow.
Because it was number one, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge track. And I can tell you what, 30 years ago that was.
Yeah, well, I remember Adamski used to come. He's a really nice guy. He used to have this little white dog. He used to look like a little goat.
That's right. It's on the sleeve.
Yeah.
There's a picture of the dog on the sleeve.
Yeah, he was a really nice kid. He was so young, and he was just, he was quite a character. And that song just blew up, and it was massive. And then after that, obviously, Seal got signed and worked with people like Trevor Horn and stuff like that. And he just became massive. But it's a good track. That's a pretty brings back a lot of memories when I heard that one.
Oh, it's a great record, and it's. I was chatting to Adam at the beginning of this year on this podcast, and he was saying that it's 30 years ago that the Killer come out, and he's re-recorded it. He's re-recorded several versions of it, and he's got Boy George to vocal it. And it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I do have. I think I've got on some old like cassette of it somewhere in a box in the loft. I have to dig it out sometimes because it was all it was days of like cassette tapes in there. But it's quite amazing how that all started out. But I was lucky because I worked with quite a lot of bands and artists from that era. Some guitar bands and some more dance based, and it was quite educational.
So moving forward a couple of years when Feeder are in the early stages and you're in London and stuff, like, was you ever go into the kind of sort of guitar clubs? Was you having nights out in them sort of places?
Yeah, I used to go to places like this. Remember, like the Wag Club?
Yeah, Waddle Street, yeah.
And I used to go down just for a late night drinking place. Do you remember the Summer Ritz in the basement?
Yeah.
It was a real dive, but it was a place to go for a late drink. Obviously, I remember like the Marquee when it was there. And then it moved to, and there was the Marquee Cafe. We used to hang out there quite a bit. That's right. In fact, we used to play there quite a bit on that tiny stage.
I've still got my...
Yeah, go on, sorry.
No, I've still got my backstage pass where my band played the Marquee. I remember it was the only time I think that my parents were like, "You playing the Marquee?" And I just didn't have the heart to go, "It's not the proper Marquee, it's the new one." But yeah.
I did actually play the Marquee once, some very early Feeder days here before Taka joined. We were three-piece, sort of noisy. We had that kind of formula. I think we had a song called Rush, which was a very early Feeder song, just before Taka joined. And we did actually play the one on Chancras Road, wasn't it? Oh no,
yeah. Tottenham Court Road. Yeah.
But otherwise, it was just sort of places like venues really that were clubs. We started off. Feeder really built our fan base from playing places like the Water Rats, which we used to call like Splash Club. That was like a really happening place at the time. That was like the kind of the CBGBs of London, or the kind of, when the whole grunge scene was happening. That was one of the key places, for bands like us. Everyone played there. Oasis played there, Placebo. Some big bands used to play there. So that was an important one to hang out. We used to just hang out there and try and get friendly with A&R guys and, try to get a record deal. But otherwise, it was just sort of, those are the obvious ones that spring to mind. Obviously, there was Electric Ballroom as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the other one. What was the pub? It was a pub. We used to play there. It was an absolute dive, but it was legendary, and it burnt down. What was it called? Not the
Holy Arms.
No, it was the one just off Camden Road. What was it called?
The Falcon.
The Falcon.
Yeah.
Remember the Falcon? That was tiny. We had some mad gigs in there.
I used to love that venue. That was one of my favourite Camden venues to play that. It was sort of tucked around the side, wasn't it?
It was really vibey. You had some great nights in there. Yeah, it was really vibey. That was a really exciting time. That was like, I think the 90s were, certainly for guitar bands, whether you were a bit more heavy or not, like us, or more on the Britpop side, it was a really exciting time. And it was really, we were kind of at the same time as like Britpop, and I suppose in the US it was all the grunge stuff happening, as they call it. So we were sort of in the middle. We were almost like mid-Atlantic, because we were kind of influenced by a lot of British bands, but also I always loved a lot of American bands, and so we were sort of in kind of somewhere they used to call us like mid-Atlantic, and that's kind of what we are really, because that's kind of, I suppose, as a band, you know, and as a songwriter, I've been influenced by so much kind of British music and punk rock and 70s and like classic stuff, but I've also been, you know, really heavily influenced by lots of American stuff, you know, 80s stuff, and, you know, Neil Young and Tom Petty and stuff like that. So I mean, I think you can hear it in, you know, in Feeder's music, and I'm not ashamed to say that, you know.
But that's a good place to be, because that means you can go on and play, you know, Kerrang are going to like you, and the NME are going to like you. You can play Beat Festival and you can play Download. It's a great place to be.
It is a good place to be on a live point of view. I think NME didn't really like us very much. They
didn't like anyone.
Well, because we came through like Kerrang, which I wouldn't change, because they were a lot more loyal to their bands. I think NME were, you know, they were seen as the cool one, but, you know, you could be Flavour of the Month there on the cover, and then they would totally turn on you. So it was a pretty ruthless place. We did get a couple of good reviews. There was a few journalists there that liked us, but it was an absolutely brutal enemy. And yeah, but you know what? We survived it, and, you know, we're still here doing it. So it didn't really affect our career. It was frustrating at the time. Kerrang were really good to us, and, you know, Metal Hammer and all these magazines. We didn't ever think we'd be in. We didn't think we were that kind of band, but they saw something in what we did. I think they liked the loud guitars.
For track 6, mate, a favourite song from an artist from your home county?
Well, it has to be a Welsh band, obviously, because I'm, you know, obviously born. But I go for the Manic Street Preachers, because I do know them a little bit. I think they're a great band. They've been around a long time. Not that dissimilar to Feeder in some way. I think they've got a very loyal fan base. You know, they're a very song-based band. You know, pretty diverse in their style as well. They've got some anthemic songs. They've got some songs a bit more uplifting. I've gone with Motorcycle Emptiness.
Oh, what a tune!
I think it's a great song. You know, they've written so many, but it's always one that I loved, and I always remember the video where I think they filmed it in Tokyo.
That's right. Yeah,
it's just a really classic song. And I just think they're a great band, and they're still here. You know, they're kind of survivors, and I know I really feel it. You know, I feel a connection with the Manics. So I've gone with, sorry to Tom Jones, which is usually the obvious one.
Sure.
But, Manics, you know, definitely one of my favourite Welsh bands.
Excellent. Have you watched the recent? I saw it about 3 weeks ago. They've just put a new, recent Manics documentary on. I think it's on Netflix or Prime. And I thought, if you get a chance to watch that, it's excellent, real career-spanning documentary. Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, they're nice guys. I've met James, and obviously I've met them all over the years. But you know, I don't know them well, but he's always a really nice guy. He's been to a few of our shows, and yeah, you know, we're sort of, you know, we text each other kind of once in a while. You know, I'm usually trying to get on, do some gigs, you know, like two of us, because, you know, it's quite a nice sort of combination, Feeder and the Manics, because we
definitely
time, and yeah, you know, I think there's certainly a lot of Feeder fans are into the Manics, and there's a lot of Manics fans who probably like to, you know, into Feeder as well. So it's always a good bill, that.
Absolutely. I listened to Nicky Wire on Adam Buxton's podcast a little while ago, and there was just a moment in there where he said, right, I'm going to read out 10 quotes that you said in the early 90s. Tell me if you said them or you didn't. Fucking hell, Grant. The stuff he was saying was so awful. And he was like, yeah, I did say that. You know, he says, like, I look back now and think, what on earth was I saying? Like, it was just some awful things. He was like, yeah, I said that one too.
Yeah, I mean, he is a character, Nicky Wire. He's not scared to say what he feels. And I quite like that about him. He's certainly he's certainly got a, you know, you certainly remember him. And he's quite an interesting guy. I like him.
Definitely. All right, so for the final song, Grant, it's your opportunity to play DJ and use this as an opportunity to turn someone onto something new, because I want to know the song that many may not know that you would like them to hear.
Oh, God, I misinterpreted. I totally got the question wrong on this one. I thought the question meant something that, you know, I might be a little bit embarrassed about. People might know.
Oh, you're not the first person to say that, Grant. You're not the first person. Like that's come up again. So
how can I answer this one?
You can answer that. Like what? Like a guilty pleasure?
That was a guilty pleasure, but yeah, it's because I'm obviously, some stuff some people might think is a little bit, naff, whether it's 80s stuff or whatever. I actually think is really good. But no, I've gone for something which I was playing the other day in the kitchen when I was doing some cooking, and my kids were starting to get quite annoyed by it. And it's a song called Yesterday Once More, which is basically by the Carpenters. And I actually really like the Carpenters. My kids don't really get it at all. So I started
once more.
on now to annoy them when I'm cooking.
I'll tell you what, when I think if I had to answer my own question earlier on what would be the first song that had an emotional impact on you, I think Rainy Days and Mondays by the Carpenters. I used to hear her voice.
Yeah.
And because my parents had played the Carpenters music, and it was like, my God, this is so sad. Like, her voice sounded so sad.
Yeah, I did have that in my list actually, and I didn't mention that earlier on. That was something. Obviously, my parents used to play Carpenters. I think everybody's did, but they were a massive, they were a big act. But yeah, she's just had an amazing voice. I mean, what a life she had, and they're great songs. And she can really sing, and she's played drums as well. That really. I mean, she's a really talented lady. But yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, they haven't quite connected with the Carpenters. But that's one that I often put on, and I get this kind of dirty look as I'm cooking something on, trying to educate them a bit on something a bit more mellow. But yeah, it just takes you back to childhood as well. Hearing something quite soothing and comforting about the Carpenters.
So I'm going to ask you this then about being a dad, because it's and the music that your kids listen to, because music has been my obsession for my whole, literally from the age of like 10 upwards, and my kids listen to commercial dance and R&B music that they hear on Kiss FM, and everything that I've always gone the opposite way from, and it's really weird. I just think, do I try and kind of go have a listen to this, because I've done it with a few songs and they've bit. But then there's also been moments where my wife's walked in the living room and she's going, "Are you really trying to get the kids into the Smiths?" And I'm like, "Yes." And I've just got all these videos of like early Smiths performances, and like my 14-year-old just sitting there looking very, very confused. And she was going, "What? Why are all them men trying to grab him?" I was like, "It's a bit like One Direction, but for grown-ups. It's a bit weird trying to explain the Smiths." And all these people just clambering to grab hold of Morrissey. I was like, "But you're not allowed to be around him now. He's gone a bit weird."
Yeah, no, I'm pretty lucky. So my daughter's been playing some really good stuff. I mean, it's very diverse, as my music kind of taste was at that age, but she's 15 now. She's been playing like loads of Nirvana recently. She's into a lot of, hip hop and dance and R&B as well. But she's got a boyfriend now, and he's really into. He's actually into some really good bands. He likes the Police and Prince and like Nirvana and stuff like that. So I'm actually quite pleased about that. So that's been quite helpful to me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is, but I think it's good to listen to all types of music. I mean, I'm not gonna criticize anyone's musical taste. It's up to them. But there is some awful stuff out there. I think as long as the kids keep an open mind, but it's up to us to sort of kind of annoy them and play a few old classics, whether it's the Smiths or Led Zeppelin or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're great songs, so the kids will pick up on them. I mean, actually, my son went through a period. He was watching what's it called? What's the TV thing? It's called Riverdale. Riverdale.
Yeah.
It's like American anyway, and they play a lot of 80s stuff on there. I think it may be other artists actually covering them, but they went through a period of playing loads of Tears for Fears, and he really got into Tears for Fears, and they're an amazing band. I mean, is it Songs from the Big Chair? That's such a classic album.
Grant, I'm not joking. I reckon in the last 10 podcasts I've done, I've ended up talking about Tears for Fears, and it's so weird.
I mean, they were in my list on. Honestly, if I could have mentioned them earlier on, I would have, because they were, there's some great songwriting.
Did you watch the recent documentary on Songs from the Big Chair that's on BBC iPlayer?
No, but
oh my God, it's amazing. I mean, they clearly don't get on, and it's obvious, it resonates as you're watching it when they're sitting there together. But they've got like Ian Stanley and all the original people that put Big Chair together, and track by track they go through it, and just when they get to Head Over Heels and you just hear that piano and they're just showing you, it's amazing, absolutely amazing, and it touches on, you know, Seeds of Love and the Hurting, but it's mainly all about Big Chair, and it's absolutely, it reminds you that they're a band that I don't think get the credit they deserve. Like they sold
incredible band. I mean, they were, you know, I think they were definitely. I mean, just the songwriting, just the production on that record is really good. It just sounds. I mean, it just sounds great now. I mean, you know, it's just anyone who disses that record, they're just idiots. It's such a fantastic album, and you know, some really really timeless songs again. And you know, they'll be around. You'll be hearing those Tears for Fears songs for many years to come because you know they're great songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the 80s stuff actually it gets a really hard time, but there were some great records made in the 80s. You know, and I think you know, I think it was a time of really really good songwriting. I mean, it got a little bit crazy on the production side. It all got a very flamboyant, and everything had to be, you know, super over produced. But they do sound good, and I think that was just the time that was what was happening at that time, you know, with the change in technology and stuff like that. But the songwriting was really strong, I think, anyway.
I think so. And the only thing that makes it, you know, some songs still, you know, stand out of date is just the fact that production, you know, electronic production has advanced so much that, you know, but then something that come out in 1990 that was an electronic dance song probably sounds very dated to you know, what's out now. It's just a sign of the times, isn't it?
I think that's quite an interesting point, because I actually think the stuff from the kind of, even some of the very, very early kind of electronic stuff. I mean, I'm kind of really into Gary Newman as well, and that kind of period where he was sort of crossing over from, you know, from like fuzzy guitars, and then found the keyboard thing and sort of, you know, found his sound. But I actually think a lot of the stuff from that era sounds actually quite cool now, because I think it's actually really influential now. You know, if you listen to lots of bands, like whether it's Killers or whoever, you know, I think it all comes from bands like that, you know, where it's like Human League. That stuff is still, I think it sounds actually pretty hip now. I think a lot of kind of very trendy bands are kind of using a lot of those sounds now.
Yeah.
And I think it's more the stuff, like you said, in the kind of some of the stuff in the 90s, it sounds more dated to me.
Yeah. But I think, you know, you look at the Killers and you can, you know, you go back to some of that electronic music like Human League, and even moving forwards a few years, for me with the Killers, I can hear the Pet Shop Boys in it. I can hear Erasure, and you know,
massively.
And like, and I can also hear, like, you know, things like the Smiths and the Cure in there as well.
Yeah, and I think as they've gone on as a band, and as they've kind of got bigger and had to play, you know, huge arenas and stadiums, I think, you know, obviously Brandon Flowers is a really good, you know, he's really come out of his shell as a front man. He's just sort of oozes confidence now. But they've almost become, all those bands you've mentioned, which I'm sure they would mention in interviews as being influential. But they've also got this kind of Bruce Springsteen kind of rock side to them as well.
Definitely.
Which has helped them transform, you know, what they are as a band, you know, to fill big arenas. And I think, I actually really love that sound as well. I mean, I think there's even elements of like Meatloaf in there and stuff like that. It's all like very dramatic and, you know, theatrical. And I think, you know, the album that had, When We Were
Young. It's Sam's Town, the album.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite.
That's so Springsteen, isn't it? It's very Springsteen. I love
that. Yeah, it's Springsteen. It's also got bits of almost like Smashing Pumpkins in there, because it was done by Alan Moulder and I think Flood, who did a lot of the Pumpkin stuff, or certainly did one of the Pumpkins albums or two of them. And you can hear too, just the way the guitars and the string arrangements work on that track. It's actually, I think it's a fantastic song. I love that track. I think it's one of their best. Yeah.
Okay, so when this lockdown starts to ease and normality resumes, and recording studios and live venues and festivals all start to happen again, what's happening?
Well, our tour's been moved because we did like a second leg to our our last album was called Tallulah, and we had like a second leg that was booked in that obviously got cancelled. That's been moved to October. Whether it happens or not, I'm really not sure. But So that was the plan. Obviously, all the festivals that we had in place, most of them have been cancelled now. There's a few that are still hanging on, but I don't know if they're going to happen. But really, to answer your question, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to carry on doing a bit more recording, do a bit more writing, and just hope that we can salvage a few gigs, for a bit later in the year. If not, touch wood, next year's going to be a busy year for everyone. I think everyone's so desperate to see, live music again. It could be a really good time.
Definitely. And so where's the best place for people to stay in touch with what's happening in the world of Grant and Feeder?
Yeah, well, I've got my music one is my Grant Nicholas Instagram and Facebook, which is kind of Feeder anyway. There's obviously Feeder Facebook. I know Facebook's a bit of an old format now, but I'm on there all the time. And obviously Instagram. I don't really use Twitter very much nowadays. I actually prefer Instagram. But yeah, you obviously keep in touch there. I'm often posting my little videos. I've got a little home studio, and I just do stuff in a very raw lo-fi vibe, just into my iPhone. That feels like the best way to do it at the moment in the situation we're in. Keep it raw, keep it real. So I'm doing a few acoustic things here and there. Hopefully not too many. I don't want to start annoying people. But yeah, obviously Facebook, Instagram, and obviously we'll let you know of any featured gigs or any new tracks that might come out.
Wonderful. Well, if it's all right with you, I'll tag you in everything when we put this episode out, and then people can go and find out more about what you're up to then.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, that'd be great. It's very hard to say anymore because I don't think any of us know what's going on really.
No, that's true. That's true.
I'm just waiting for that call saying, "Oh, something's happening."
Grant, thank you so much for giving up your time today, mate.
I really enjoyed
it. Oh, mate, it's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, mate. Well, you take care, yeah?
Cool. Right, I've just pressed stop. That's all right, it's done. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
That's all right. I actually quite enjoyed it. It's actually filled an hour of my day.